Good afternoon. Convening this meeting of the House Special Committee to consider miscellaneous communication numbers 1001 and 1002. This meeting is being conducted here at the State Capitol, Conference Room 423. It is April 21, 2022, and the time is 3:32 p.m. Present here in the meeting are committee members and representatives Amy Peruso, Scott Matayoshi, Lauren Matsumoto, Linda Ichiyama, Vice Chair Mark Nakashima, and myself, Chair Della Albalati. Also present are petitioners Michael Goloyu Sr. and Carolyn Goloyu, along with respondent's attorney Howard Luke. Thank you, Mr. Luke. I know that you are in trial, so that you made a special attempt to get here. So thank you for that.
My son, my associate Daniel Luke, will be joining us shortly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
In addition to the committee members and parties, we have House staff members assisting with the public broadcasting of this meeting on the House YouTube channel, and court reporter Sue Flint, who is transcribing this meeting. In order to create a clear record, members, when you speak, please speak clearly into the microphone in front of you. We are here today to discuss and deliberate the questions and concerns raised by miscellaneous communications numbers 1001 and 1002 pursuant to our obligations under the Hawaii State Constitution and the rules of the House, namely House Rule 62, the House Standards of Conduct, and Rule 5 of this committee that requires us to consider evidence that is clear and convincing. Members, you have been provided with evidence that includes the trial, pre-trial and trial transcripts in this matter, in the criminal matter, body camera videos that were exhibits at the trial, as well as documentary exhibits. And I want to thank respondent's counsel, Mr. Luke, who did provide us with the body camera videos, all of the body camera videos. We also were able to acquire those same videos from the prosecutor's office, including the documentary evidence that you have in front of you. We also have available to everybody on this committee submittals of the parties, which include in part communications received from the respondents declarations and written responses to questions, as well as petitioners submittals. Members, I'd like to begin our deliberations today with each of you weighing in and providing your impression of the evidence that has been presented to this committee as related to the question of whether Representative Parr's conduct on February 21, 2021 violates Rule 62 of the House Standards of Conduct. We'll start first with Representative Peruso. And please speak into the microphone.
Thank you, Chair. So I think in our last conversation, the last deliberation, when we were examining some evidence and had some opportunity to talk with the parties, I raised questions about whether or not Rule 62.2 of the Code of Legislative Conduct had been violated, because it had been my understanding from news reports that the representative had lent the prestige of her office to advance her private interests. Looking at the body camera evidence and rereading the transcripts, it's not clear to me that we have direct evidence of that. I did not see that assertion made on any of the body camera footage. I am still concerned about whether or not there has been a violation of 62.1. And if you will allow me, I'd like to read that.
Sure.
It says that members should conduct themselves in a respectful manner befitting the office with which they, as elected officials, have been entrusted, respecting and complying with the law and acting at all times in a manner that promotes public confidence in the integrity of the House. And I think for me, again, as I watched that body camera footage multiple times, several questions arose. The first has to do with truthfulness. So when the representative appeared before our body to apologize for the incident of that day, there was a claim made that the behavior was attributable to the ingestion of prescription medication. However, when we watched that body camera footage at 3 different times in response to 3 different officers' questions, phrased in different ways, the representative denied that she had taken any prescription medication. So for me, that raises the question of what if she was not truthful with the officers, why not? And then if if she was not truthful with us, why not? So wherein does the truth lie? And then the second question that arises is this question of impairment. I think that not only was she driving the wrong way in the center of Beretania, but I think that, you know, with all due respect to her attorney, I did see evidence of a pretty serious impairment. And I would say that for me, the two examples that stick out the most were the fact that in the course of about 10 minutes, she asked at least 5 or 6 times where her purse was. And at every point, the officer said the same thing back to her, that the purse was in the trunk, not to worry, that they had the purse, that it was with them. And yet she continued to ask the same question, which is not, I would say, normal behavior for the representative. And she also made a comment about Black Lives Matter that I have a hard time believing that the representative would make were she not impaired. So, and I don't think the question before us is not whether she was or was not impaired, but it is whether or not she was conducting herself in a manner that befits the office to which she was entrusted. And if that behavior promotes public confidence in the integrity of the House. So those are just kind of my observations and my interpretation of the evidence that we saw. So that's helpful.
Thank you, Representative Purcell. Again, I want everyone to be able to weigh on this because this is going to be a collective decision of the committee. Representative Matayoshi.
So we're not going down the table in order. Yeah, so I also reviewed the evidence. I also reviewed the body cam footage, certain statements made by Representative Har in response to the questions posed by certain members of this committee. At our last meeting, the court transcript, her newsletter that we did get a copy of explaining the situation to her constituents, and a number of other documents. There are 3 things that really stuck out to me, and I don't want to weigh in on whether she was intoxicated or not. I mean, I am certainly no expert in that. For me, it did not seem like she was, I just did not get the impression that she was so intoxicated that she was falling over or anything. But again, that's really not an issue here. And don't ever profess to be an expert on that. The 3 things that really stuck out to me was that she was drinking alcohol, which was confirmed by her responses to our questions and the court transcript. Now, the amount of alcohol is in question, but even very little alcohol, Representative Har admits that she drank some amount of alcohol. She also admitted to taking codeine in her February 2021 newsletter. That was the prescription drug that she was apparently had ingested. I understand Representative Prusso has doubts on whether she was on prescription medication at the time or not. But regardless, I considered it an admission by her in that February 2021 newsletter that she was taking codeine, as she stated, which was not prescribed for her current illness, as evidenced by her response number 5 to the committee, in which she stated that this was an old prescription that was in fact expired. So we can infer that she was not prescribed codeine for this illness that she was currently experiencing. Now, codeine, according to the National Institute of Health, has a very strong interaction with alcohol, even a very small amount of alcohol. So I consider that drinking or consumption of alcohol with taking this prescription drug that was not prescribed to her for this illness to be a mistake, a lapse in judgment that really damages the public's confidence in the integrity of the House per Rule 62.1. The second is that she was eating and drinking indoors with others, which she admitted in her response at her submission to our committee at paragraph 11, and also in the court transcript on December 6th, 2021 on page 164. Eating and drinking with others, this is February or early 2021 during the pandemic, while she admitted that she was having an upper respiratory illness for several weeks now, as she stated in her February 2021 newsletter, which caused a, quote, persistent long-term cough, end quote, which she stated in her, again, in response to the committee's questions for response number 5. the fact that she had a persistent long-term cough really disturbs me, that she said that she had it for weeks prior to this incident, but she still decided to go into an indoor establishment to eat and drink unmasked. Exhibit 32 at the trial is a picture from the restaurant of a sign that basically says, if you're coughing, don't come in here, to paraphrase things. So she clearly disregarded that sign as well. And just generally, I believe representatives need to set a higher bar or standard of conduct, especially during a pandemic or a crisis. So the fact that she decided that even though she'd had a cough for a couple of weeks, apparently undiagnosed because she wasn't prescribed any medication, she decided to nevertheless go out into the community, into an indoor establishment with people of various bubbles and eat and drink unmasked. That to me, I think is a lapse in judgment that reflects badly on the House of Representatives. As elected officials, I think we do need to hold ourselves to a higher standard of action, and that was not it. The last one was also brought up by Representative Prusso, driving down the middle of Beretania. Trial Exhibit 34 clearly shows that she was in the middle of Beretania going the wrong way. And it wasn't just driving down the middle of Beretania the wrong way, it was that she also endangered others, which we can see both on the court transcript from January 10th, 2022 on pages 13 through 16, and in the body cam footage from the discussions with some of the officers, that there was a moped that had to swerve to avoid her, that there were other cars that she potentially could have hit doing this action. So that action as well, I think, and just the decision to get behind the wheel, if you are that so intoxicated that you can't find your way down a fairly large one-way street, they're going the correct direction, I think shows a lapse in judgment. And again, was not promoting confidence in the integrity of the House per Rule 62.1.
Thank you, Representative Matsuyoshi. Representative Matsumoto.
For me, after reviewing all of the information presented, some of the findings or impressions that I had were pretty similar to Prusso and Matsuyoshi, Representatives Prusso and Matsuyoshi, for the safety and well-being of others, going into the restaurant with a cold. Also, for me, more importantly, driving down the wrong way on the road is a real safety concern and could have had deadly consequences. I would like to add, though, after reviewing the body cam footage, Representative Har did comply with the officer. She was polite. She was very apologetic the entire time. And I've always been someone, since I've been elected, that's advocated for government transparency and accountability. And it's so important for elected officials and servants of the public that we aren't above the law and that we make sure that we comply. I like Representative Matsuyoshi. I do feel that we have to be held to an even higher standard. And when there is a public concern, I think there is our duty as a legislature to follow through and ensure that those concerns are taken seriously. And I do feel that after several meetings, we've had several meetings, we've had a lot of discussions, both sides have presented. I do think our special committee has done our due diligence and has come to the point where we can make a decision.
Thank you, Representative Matsumoto. Representative Ichiyama. Okay, and Representative Nakashima.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I did also view the body cam footage, and my overall impression was that Representative Har was apologetic and embarrassed by the situation. I also, in watching it, I did not have a sense that she was impaired. Seemed fairly lucid. I looked for the Black Lives Matter comment because it had been broadcast. However, in the context of the body cam, it seemed more like a response to being handcuffed rather than any type of political statement, so to speak. That being said, I am concerned about the situation that could have gotten could have gone dreadfully wrong by driving down the wrong way, but fortunately there was no accident, so to speak. There were close calls, but nobody was hurt. So I think I take those things into consideration as well.
Thank you, members. I would add just to, as my impressions, I echo many of the things that have already been said by all the representatives, but I want to circle back to something that Representative Peruso said, and I was very careful, and I really reviewed, like many of you, the body cam videos to see whether or not there was a violation of 62.2, which was the statement about, do you know who I am? And there was nothing in any of the videos communicating that statement being made or showing that that statement was made, nor was it all in the reports, the police reports that were submitted. So I find that very troubling in this world where things get blown out of proportion and things often get tried in the media. And that's why we have this process and why we also had the community can trust the criminal process that also took place. So members, based on this conversation, I truly do appreciate your candor and your thoughts, as the ultimate findings and recommendations, as I said before, of this committee is going to be a collective decision of this committee based upon our diligent review of the evidence, where we are required to determine whether we have a firm belief or conviction that it is highly probable that the actual contentions are true. This is a higher standard of proof than proof by a preponderance of the evidence, but it does not require proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Members, I emphasize this clear and convincing standard of proof because this committee, I believe, recognizes and understands that we are not a criminal court, but we are engaged in a legislative proceeding subject to our own rules, which we are constitutionally mandated to apply, and different standards more akin to an administrative process. This committee acknowledges, and as committee members all agree, the criminal proceeding related to this matter was dismissed by the district court following a trial that took place on December 6, 2021 and January 10, 2022. The district court did ultimately dismiss the charge of driving under the influence or operating a vehicle under the influence of an intoxicant against Representative Har on two grounds. One, that the state failed to comply with HRS 805-1 under the Thompson ruling and found that the complaint was initially defective. And two, that Representative Har was acquitted of the OVUII charge because the state failed to meet its overall burden of presenting beyond a reasonable doubt a prima facie case that she was operating a vehicle under the influence of an intoxicant. Even as we acknowledge what happened in the criminal proceeding, we are still obligated, members, under the clear and convincing evidentiary standard to determine whether Representative Har's conduct of February 21, 2021 violated our House standards of conducts. So after listening to this very candid and discussion of the evidence following your own independent review and my own review of all the credible relevant evidence before us, namely the entirety of the body camera videos of over 40 minutes of footage, admissions made and exhibits introduced into evidence at trial, and by respondents' own statements made to this body and communications to our committee, I recommend that this committee find, based on clear and convincing evidence, that one, on February 22, 2021, Representative Har took prescription medicine which contained codeine to control the symptoms associated with an upper respiratory illness. Two, on that same day, Representative Har was at Any Place Lounge, a public restaurant where she ate and drank some amount of alcohol, despite the widely known dangers of mixing any opioid drug with alcohol. Three, at some point after leaving at Any Place Lounge, Representative Har was clearly found driving down the wrong way on a one-way street, South Baratang Street, which endangered others on the road on the night of February 22, 2021. She was stopped and arrested for suspicion of driving under the influence of an intoxicant after being found driving down the wrong way on South Baratania Street. During this stop and in accordance with her rights, her legal rights, Representative Har refused to take a breath test or field sobriety test, which she was entitled to do. Consistent with this refusal, the following facts are that 1, Representative Har's driver's license was revoked pursuant to the administrative license revocation process. Number 2, she's required to have an ignition interlock in her vehicle for 2 years. And 3, in order to have her license restored after 2 years, Representative Har will be required to either, quote, apply for a new license or renew her privilege to operate a vehicle after proving that she's complied with the conditions of the administrative revocation imposed, close quote. And she must, quote, successfully complete each requirement for either obtaining a new license or renewing her privilege to operate a vehicle in the state of Hawaii, close quote. Members, any discussions about this recommendations of findings that I'm asking you to act upon?
Yeah, I really do think that we need to include in the findings of fact, the fact that she has admitted that she had an upper respiratory illness for several weeks prior to engaging in this eating and drinking, and that she entered really what overlays us all is COVID, and has overlaid, let's be honest, has overlaid society for the past years. This is right at the height of the pandemic in 2021. This is before vaccines were widely available and before they were available to us as representatives even. And the fact that she knew she had a cough for weeks, that it must have been bad enough for her to take prescription medication, but that she still went into an enclosed eating and drinking area with people from well outside her bubble, and many different bubbles, and including the server that was at the table too. I mean, I really think that showed poor judgment, especially during a time of crisis and an emergency that we're in, that reflected very badly on the House. I really think that does need to be included in the facts somewhere.
Members, any comment or response to that? Representative Matayushi, this is a little closer call for me, and I do understand your concerns that this was at a time when there were orders in place. However, I think it's a much closer call for me, and so I don't. I think the clear and convincing evidentiary standard being more than just preponderance of the evidence and not knowing the extent, and there are representations that the Any Place Lounge was complying, and so I would assume that there was masking, and that at that time there was allowances to be able to go to a restaurant, and people aren't stopped from having to go, and so my assumption is that Any Place Lounge had the proper procedures in place.
Oh yeah, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to imply that Any Place Lounge was doing anything wrong, really. If they were legally open, then they were legally open. It's more that if Representative Har knew she had a respiratory illness, she should not have been going to Any Place Lounge. I think that shows a lack of judgment and a mistake that could have gotten a lot of other people sick during a pandemic. I mean, this is a time when, back in February 2021, me and my family were so terrified of COVID. We didn't know a lot about it. There was no vaccine available. I mean, it was a really scary time. And we as leaders of the community were asking people to stay home, to be safe, to make the right decisions. And Representative Hart did not follow that example. And I think that reflects very badly and really shakes the public confidence in the integrity of the House per Rule 62.1 by her going out when we're telling everyone to stay home, especially when she knew she had a respiratory illness. If she didn't have a respiratory illness at the time and she chose to, go to a place in compliance with regulations, then I see a lot less of a problem with that. But it's the fact that she had a respiratory illness for weeks and a cough and she still went out anyway. That really disturbs me.
Members, I would like others to weigh in if you have a strong opinion one way or the other. I will be open to adding this to the findings of fact. And we could fashion it as a finding of fact that says, moreover, Representative Har was at Any Place Lounge when she knew she had an upper respiratory illness during a time when the city and county of Honolulu and the state of Hawaii had certain orders in place that advised individuals experiencing illness not to be in public places. Seeing no objection, I would add that to the recommendation of the findings. Members, so as I've read, this is the first vote to take. I recommend that those findings, as I announced earlier, and the one that I just read, be added. Vice Chair for the vote.
Okay, all those in favor of the recommendation of the chair, chair and vice chair vote aye. Representative Ichiyama.
Aye.
Representative Matayoshi.
Aye.
Representative Matsumoto.
Aye.
Representative Caruso.
Aye.
Motion is carried.
Thank you, members. So based on these findings, members, my next recommendation is that this committee recommend that Representative Har be required to inform the House in writing in a letter to the Speaker of the House the current conditions she's required to comply with as part of the administrative revocation process. And two, at the time she seeks to renew her license after the 2-year revocation period ends, Representative Har, should she still be in the House, be required in writing to inform the House of the conditions of either obtaining a new license or the renewal of her license, and that she has successfully complied with those requirements. Members, do you understand the recommendation I'm making? Any discussion?
Yeah, I'm not sure that that goes quite far enough for my liking. And you know, I leave it up to the committee, really. The recommendation that the chair made, I feel like, is just a reflection of the punishments already in place, which is something. I mean, I think that Representative Har having to acknowledge that she is complying with the administrative proceeding order for the revocation of her license and whatever else was required by those procedures is a good one. But I really think that her actions, as described in our recently voted on statement of facts, calls for at least a letter of apology or a statement of apology on the floor for her actions. It seems like driving down the middle of Veritania the wrong direction came up in a number of committee members' statements, and it seems like that is one of the bigger things that has disturbed this committee. So I think that that at least needs to be dealt with in a letter or a statement of apology. I still believe that the choice to take a prescription drug with codeine and drink any amount of alcohol was a poor decision that reflects badly on the House and should have some kind of public apology. And also the decision to go and eat and drink indoors unmasked during the global pandemic when she had an upper respiratory illness for a number of weeks also begs for an apology. And the reason I'm asking for this apology is just to try to restore public confidence in the House. I want the public to understand that Representative Har acknowledges and understands that these were actions that were wrong and that she regrets and shows remorse for them, in a public manner, and hopefully restores to the public that the members of the House are intending to acknowledge her missteps and move forward.
Any other discussion, members? Representative Ichiyama.
Thank you, Chair. You know, I certainly appreciate the sentiments expressed by Representative Matayoshi. One of the pieces of evidence that was submitted to this committee was Representative Har's public apology on the floor, as well as a written apology in her district newsletter that was sent out to all of her constituents. To me, that is the written apology. That is also the verbal apology. And I think that the remorse and regret was sincere. So I think that on that basis, I support the chair's recommendation as it was made.
Thank you. Any other further comments or discussion points?
Sorry, just that's a really good point by Representative Ichiyama too. The written statement and the public statement, I think to an extent have already been made, but the driving down the wrong way in Veritania and at least going and eating and drinking in public with upper respiratory illness were not addressed in either of those apologies, at least. So I think that maybe part of it was taken care of, and I acknowledge that. And Representative Hart did genuinely seem remorseful during her apology, but I think there are other items that were not touched on yet that may need to be addressed.
So I'll weigh in on this. I understand your sentiment of wanting more. I do, however, acknowledge that there was already public apologies made. And I want to remind this committee that this matter is actually going to have to be considered by the full body and then voted upon. And so this is not over. And I think that, given everything that has happened, that again, fairness and due process is also the other principles that I have hopefully, and I know that we've all hopefully tried to apply to this. And so I think the recommendation that as I have fashioned it is commensurate with and reflective of the work that we did as a committee to look into this matter. And so I will hold my recommendation as I stated previously. Thank you, Representative Matayoshi.
Thank you, Chair.
Any other further questions or comments? If not, if the committee is ready for the vote, Representative Vice Chair Nakashima.
Thank you. On the second recommendation by the chair and vice chair vote aye. Representative Ichiyama. Representative Matayoshi.
I'm going to go with reservations just for the things I stated earlier.
Representative Matsumoto.
Aye.
Representative Pruso.
Hi.
Motion is carried.
Thank you, committee. So at this point, members, my staff will be working with our attorney and HMSO to complete the committee's findings and recommendations. Our hope is to get a committee report filed by the end of the business day tomorrow or possibly on Monday so that we can ensure that we complete the process as envisioned by the speaker's memo. Any questions on that process, members? Seeing none, this committee, yes, go ahead.
Thank you for your indulgence. I just wanted to say thank you to the petitioners and thank you to the council for respondent. I think you all conducted yourselves in a very professional, respectful manner during this entire proceeding. And that's something that I greatly appreciated. And I think that helped make this entire proceeding much more balanced and productive. And so I wanted to thank both of you sincerely. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Since I allowed that, any further comments or questions? All right, seeing none, this committee is adjourned.